This week, across the AIinAsia network, the hardware layer kept tightening its grip on the headlines. From memory chips in Korea to sovereign silicon in India to data center concrete in Europe, the physical infrastructure underneath AI is where the capital, the politics, and the strategic bets are concentrating. Let us walk through it in a few minutes. From Asia this week, the Korean memory trade is reaching a structural inflection. SK Hynix has closed to within 6.8% of Samsung Electronics on market capitalization on the Kospi, a gap that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. The high-bandwidth memory boom is rewriting the pecking order in Korean equities, and the concentration risk inside the index is now a governance question as much as a market one. Meanwhile, Micron's run to a $1 trillion market cap was built almost entirely on an Asian supply chain, running through SK Hynix, Samsung, Kioxia, and the Taiwan packaging tier, not US production. The trillion-dollar headline sits in Boise, but the value chain sits in Asia. In China, two stories stood out. Huawei introduced what it calls the Tau scaling law, alongside a logic folding architecture at a Shanghai event, targeting 1.4 nanometer class transistor density by 2031. This is Huawei's clearest signal yet that it intends to build a self-contained AI chip stack as Nvidia formally steps back from the Chinese market. Separately, Beijing is accelerating embodied AI with a Tianjin Expo drawing more than 700 exhibitors, a national pilot base in Hangzhou, and a new multimodal robot dataset from Paxini. The policy push is deliberate. China wants robotics and physical AI to be the next scaling frontier, not just language models. Further south, Bangalore-based C2I Semiconductors extended its Series A to $16.7 million, with TDK Ventures joining the round. C2I is building power silicon for AI data centers, a niche that India has largely ceded to the US and Japan until now. It is a small round, but it anchors a thesis that India can participate in the AI hardware stack, not just the software and services layer. And in Singapore, IMDA refreshed its agentic AI governance framework with new multi-agent guidance and a third-party agent risk module 4 months after the Davos launch. Singapore continues to move faster than most on the regulatory side, and the multi-agent framing is notably ahead of where most jurisdictions are thinking. Two more threads worth noting. Nvidia's Jensen Huang lifted the company's annual Taiwan spend to roughly $150 billion and broke ground on a new Taipei campus called Constellation, reinforcing Taiwan's centrality to the global AI supply chain. And at Beyond Expo in Macau, AI wearables moved from prototype to consumer surface, with Quen AI glasses and translation devices on display, and Omdia forecasting 10 million units shipped this year. Asia is where AI meets the body, not just the cloud. Over in the Arab world, Saudi Arabia's sovereign AI ambitions took a more concrete shape this week with continued investment in large language models trained on Arabic and regional data. The goal is straightforward: reduce reliance on international platforms and build inference capacity that reflects local language, culture, and regulatory requirements. This is not a vanity project. For a government that processes millions of Arabic language documents across ministries, courts, and healthcare systems, the dependency risk on English-centric models is real. The UAE continued expanding AI-powered smart city infrastructure across multiple emirates, deploying systems for traffic management, utilities monitoring, and public services. The scale here is worth watching. These are not pilot programs anymore. They are operational deployments across cities with millions of residents, and the data feedback loops they generate will shape how Gulf governments think about urban planning for the next decade. In Qatar, the Qatar Computing Research Institute released an open-source Arabic natural language processing toolkit aimed at the regional research community. Open-source tooling for Arabic NLP has been a persistent gap, and QCRI's release gives university labs and startups across the region a shared foundation to build on, rather than each team reinventing tokenization and morphological analysis from scratch. And Humain, the Saudi AI infrastructure vehicle, had a 3-deal week that tested how Gulf AI commitments hold up under geopolitical stress. The question for capital allocators is whether sovereign AI spending in the Gulf is durable through volatility or whether it tracks oil sentiment. So far, the spending has held, and from Europe, the week split neatly between industrial ambition and political friction. Mistral signed long-term partnerships with BMW and Airbus, the Paris-based firm's most concrete step yet in pivoting from a general model house to a European industrial AI platform. This is the bet that matters for European AI, not competing with US frontier labs on benchmarks, but embedding models inside manufacturing, aerospace, and automotive workflows where domain knowledge and data residency are genuine advantages. On the capital side, two raises stood out. Stockholm-based Transition Ventures closed a €128 million fund focused on companies sitting at the join of climate and AI. And London-based hyperscale developer PureDC closed $2.7 billion in equity and debt to fund a 1.4 gigawatt data center portfolio across the UK, Spain, Italy and the Gulf. That PureDC raise lands against a backdrop of growing resistance. Dublin has a moratorium, Haarlem is tightening zoning, Frankfurt has imposed ceilings, Aragon is fighting over water concessions, and Brussels is drafting a code of conduct. 5 capitals pushing back at once. The European AI workload curve is being redrawn by planning committees as much as by engineers. In London, a senior UK minister framed AI adoption inside public services as a productivity imperative, warning that staying with current staffing models would mean choosing decline. That language is unusually blunt for Whitehall, and signals that the UK government is preparing to move faster on procurement, even if public opinion is mixed. Meanwhile, DeepMind's office at Pancras Square and the AI Safety Institute inside DSIT are doing more to shape European AI policy than any formal lobbying operation in Brussels, a structural dynamic that continental policymakers are only beginning to reckon with. And Pope Leo XIV told reporters at the Vatican that AI needs to be disarmed, the strongest moral framing the Holy See has used since his election. Brussels will read that as cover for tighter regulation. Industry will read it as noise. The truth, as usual, sits somewhere in between. Step back and the week's pattern is clear. Whether it is SK Hynix closing the gap on Samsung, Huawei charting its own chip roadmap, Saudi Arabia training sovereign models, or PureDC pouring billions into European concrete, the competition in AI has moved decisively into the physical layer. Models are important, but the durable advantages are being built in fabs, data centers, power silicon, and governance frameworks. The organizations that control those layers will set the terms for everything that runs on top. That is your weekly roundup from the AIinAsia network. Stay sharp, build well, see you next week.